family of possums were walking through their magical forest, where the trees were tall and the moonlight seemed to whisper secrets in the night. They were a happy family, and for the most part, they lived in harmony with nature. They never caused any trouble, while their neighbors enjoyed their company. In actuality, they enriched the forest. They were led by the male possum, Garth, and his wife, Kaylin. Kaylin was the glue that kept her family together. Her firstborn daughter, Misha, and the younger one, Sue, always wanted to emulate her every move. This night was like every other. The mother and her daughters would slink through the forest, trying to find whatever food they could, and they would use this as a bonding moment. The father possum, who usually kept a close eye on his territory, actually stayed with his family, which was very unusual for opossums. This year is actually turning out pretty well. I agree, Misha. How much do we carry, Mom? As much as you can, Sue.
Well, look what I found.
Garth brings in a healthy sample of very special berries that grow in only one region of the forest. Did you really steal that?
Steal? It's on the border of our territory.
You know it's not. Garth, put it back.
No, my smell's all over it. If I go and put it back now, then it's gonna be even more trouble for us. And I didn't steal it. We share the border.
I don't think he feels that way. Well, I agree with Dad. If it's on our border, then we should get the fruit of the loins too. I don't think that's the saying, Misha. Whatever. Give it over here. I'll have it. No, put it back.
Oh, come on. Let them live a little bit.
Live a little bit? If we keep doing this, we're inviting people to kill us.
George isn't gonna kill us. Alright, he's a fellow opossum.
Yes, who runs with raccoons.
So?
You know what people say about them.
Okay, that's a bit prejudiced of you to say. I've met some really nice raccoons, and as long as you don't bother them, they won't bother you.
Garth, no. What are we teaching the children? Garth wraps his pink tail around his wife's body and drags her close to him.
I need you to relax, okay? I know, you're looking out for the family, but we've been doing this for years.
Yeah, Mom, you only found out about it recently. It's a little different. Now that I know about it, I can't keep quiet. It is dangerous. Just because you've gotten away with something for a specific amount of time doesn't mean that you're not going to reap the consequences later.
All right, tell you what.
Garth takes some of the berries, holding them in his cheeks while he gives the others to his daughters, and pops one in his wife's mouth. He starts walking back on all fours to the den, and looks back with that disarming smile that he won his female with. Their fallen log home lay right ahead of them.
I promise that this will be the last year, okay? If you promise to enjoy it with everything you've got right now.
Garth.
I promise, okay? I just want you guys to have something nice to look forward to. And before you knew where it came from, you were all so happy.
Don't mind Mom, Dad, I'm still happy. I don't give a damn if it comes from the border. Besides, they rot all the time, and you know what that brings. Misha walks ahead of her parents and enters the log. Sue, with her pink tail held in the air, follows after her sister. She looks back in the forest, something foreboding in her mind. What is that? As she stares deeper, she can see a figure moving. Anyway, I'm gonna go in, Dad. Mom. All right, Sue. Kaylin stays outside with Garth. They watch their children enter the log, and then turn back to face each other. Garth?
Yes, my love.
He nuzzles her, kissing her neck, kissing her nose, kissing her ears, and then licking her all over her face. As much as Kaylin is angry with him, she can't fight him with this. She loves the affection, even though he only uses these times when she's angry to give her this much. I need you to just take this more seriously. My mother and father,
I know. I'm not going to make those same mistakes.
But you are making those mistakes. They hear something in the distance, crashing through the trees. Maybe squirrels fighting.
All right, let's get inside. All right, I got to do my patrol, and we'll talk about this in the morning.
No, we won't. But you promised me, so I'm willing to trust you. Please. We have to be a team. The kids can't see me saying one thing and then hear you saying something completely different. It's very disrespectful to me as their mother.
I understand, and you're right. But you also have to allow me as their father to have fun with them. Like, we both have completely different parenting styles.
You're gone for half of the year. Of course we do. Feeling annoyed, Garth rolls his eyes and goes inside the log.
All right, I'm done fighting for the night. I don't want this to continue longer than it has. Let's try to be happy. Let's try to be cohesive for our daughters, all right? I already told you I wouldn't do this. This is the last time. Can we move on from this, please?
Fine. Kaylin walks ahead of him, and Garth looks back into the woods, through the opening of their log. He goes into the log, and his family settle in for the night, eating their berries, before going to sleep. Under the moonlit night, Sue carefully leaves their enclosure. She looks at her sleeping mother and father, curled up beside one another. She then ventures out into the cool, secretive night. She observes the eerie moon's reflection on the surface of the stream beside their den. Her whole life, where she's lived, has always been bathed in ineffable magic. She's always felt safe and secure. Using her front paws, she wipes her face and fixes her hair. She also grooms her pink naked tail. Taking a deep breath, she puffs up and then exhales, and then walks towards a stream in the night. There she meets a creature lying up against one of the trees. He chitters and is also wiping his ears and his fluffy tail that he uses as a blanket from the chill. He looks over at her. No fear in his eyes whatsoever. Actually, there's recognition, familiarity, tenderness.
Sue, come on.
Sorry it took so long. My mom and dad were fighting again. They kept us up.
You really gotta go out and be on your own soon, you know. Come on, sit down.
Sue shyly sits down beside the squirrel. He was pretty large, even for his age, and as a matter of fact, large for his species. He put his fluffy tail around Sue. She nuzzled inside it, as though this was a ritual they've always performed around this time.
What about you? Are things any different? Nah, treasure troving is coming up short nowadays.
Why? You're the top of the game.
Yeah, well, you'd think so. A lot of the other squirrels are getting there before I do, but now they're disappearing, and nobody wants to go out and do it.
Isn't that good? Like, that means more for you, right?
Not really. The disappearing kind of goes hand in hand with the treasure also disappearing. It's very weird. I don't like it. I don't like things that I can't explain.
Vairi, you remember when we were younger and we talked about leaving? Like, further out?
Yeah?
The squirrel is still looking up at the moon, enthralled with its beauty and its illumination casting a ghostly hue of white on everything that it touches. Do you still feel that way? Like, do you still want to go? Vairi blinks rapidly twice and looks over at her.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I want to be out on my own. I feel like we're going nowhere, you know? And the forest is starting to feel a little crowded.
Crowded.
Vairi laughs. He removes his tail from Sue and then climbs up the tree.
Come on.
Sue rolls her eyes playfully and follows him up the tree. A very odd pair, and a possum and squirrel together. As they go up to the tallest tree, they look over at the moon and the horizon. As far as they can see, just canopy.
Up here, Sue, the world is ours. We don't have to go anywhere to get that. I learned that the trick is that you make your world whatever you want it to be wherever you are. Because wherever you go, reality's always going to catch up to you. So you gotta make your fantasy in reality, you know, like light casting away darkness.
Sue had no idea if what Vairi was talking about was wisdom or not. Half the time he said some strange things. Must be all those fermented nuts. Yeah, I get it. I don't know.
Look, when you're with me, you're in my world. We don't think about that stuff, alright? We're just chill. Look at this. Look at us. We can climb the top tree and just look at the world beneath us. It's like a totally different world up here. Up here.
He climbs a little higher on the very tip and top of the tree that they're on. He balances on one finger and then grabs on to the tip of the summit of the tree, wraps his tail around it, and then holds out all four of his legs.
We're the kings. This is a completely different world. The top of the trees are the ground, and the only way for us to go is up.
Sue looks up at the sky, a beautiful blanket of endless shimmer, an ocean of splendiferous and enchanting dying lights. While Sue and Vairi were cuddling up to each other at the tippy top of the trees, they both look down. Something has caught their attention. Vairi then looks straight ahead in one of the tallest trees in the distance. Sue can tell that something is wrong as she feels his body tense next to hers, even through all his fluff. Vairi? What's wrong?
Look.
In the distance, a murder of crows spastically fly in every direction from out of the trees, all of them uttering one word. Danger! Danger! Ah! Ah! Danger! 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 Looking down, Vairi can see one of the shorter trees beneath them. Right under that tree was the log in which Sue and her family made their home. What's going on? What's got them spooked?
I think you should go home, Sue.
Vairi says, looking at her very slowly and turning his head in her direction. What? Why?
Your family. Something's coming.
What do you mean something's coming? Can you stop being cryptic for 1 second and tell me?
There's no time.
For the first time that Sue has ever known of, she sees Viry panicking, his eyes shifting crazily from top to bottom and in every direction. His tail flickers and he starts climbing down the tree.
Sue, come on.
Sue follows him without any complaint. As they reach the lowest branch, Sue waits for his signal. Something is lurking in a bush right below them. They can hear it walking slowly as if hunting something, possibly hunting them. But Sue feels safe, knowing that not a lot of animals can come to where they are. Even still, Viry was a much better climber and leaper than she was. As Sue nervously waits for whatever it is to reveal itself, Viry stands in a position as if preparing to leap away at a moment's notice. Then something quickly, eerily, reveals itself from the bushes. Sue jumps up and screams and covers her face and almost falls out the tree, to see that it's her sister, Misha, looking up at them.
God, you guys scared me half to death. What are you doing, Sue?
Misha? What? Did you scare the crows?
What?
Misha says, looking up at her sister, annoyed. Misha wipes her eyes and rolls them. Sue, let's go, before Mom and Dad find you. Are they still sleeping?
Oh, hello.
Misha just looks at Viry. Then she looks at her sister, still up in the branch. Really, Sue? Gross. What? No, it's not. It's not what you think.
You guys better get out of here. Something is coming. Something different.
Oh my god. Okay, you know what? I don't even know why I bother. I cover for you. I try to talk to you. Misha. And all you do is everything Mom and Dad want you not to. Misha, please. You're not supposed to sneak out in the middle of the night, Sue. I don't care what your kinks are. You can't do that. You put everybody in danger. Misha is still lecturing her little sister. And when Sue looks around, Viry is gone. No doubt having gone up the tree and leapt to another tree. He just left them there. Probably worried that they were drawing too much attention to themselves. Sue looked around, shaking out her little shaggy possum coat. She looked down at her sister. And when she realized, after flipping her ears to and fro, that the danger seemed as though it was gone, she's relieved. I guess it was Misha that scared the crows, or maybe something else in the distance. All right, Misha, I'm sorry. Really? That's it? Yeah, what do you want me to say? Nothing. All right, come on. Sue makes her way down the tree, and Misha waits for her, looking around to make sure that everything's clear. Sue touches down on the ground and hugs her sister. Oh, don't you dare. I know what you're trying to do. Butter me up. Are you gonna tell Mom and Dad? If I wanted to get you in trouble, I would have done so a long time ago. No, you're actually racking up those points, girl, because one day I'm gonna need the favor, and you're gonna remember all the times that I covered for you. They head back to the log, and they can hear their parents snoring inside. It's a light purring noise that blends in with the ambience of the forest. All right, be quiet. I hope Dad's not still up. Misha prepares to go in, Sue right behind her. Sue looks back up the tree, and she can see a pair of eyes staring down at her. Viry. Misha. Viry was saying something. Right in front of her fear-stricken blue eyes, Sue watched as some large, hairy creature grabbed up her sister right in front of her and quickly made off with her. Sue screamed, trying so hard to process what she'd just seen. Misha! She looked all around and couldn't see anything, but she could hear Misha's screams. Blood was all over her face. Sue panicked, her front legs shaking. She used her little paws to wipe the slimy warmth off her face and looked down at her paws to see them wet and slick with blood. Her eyes widened. Her nerves were alight with the adrenaline coursing through her. She screamed so loud that it seemed to shake the forest around her. Garth, her father, quickly leapt out.
What's wrong? Hey, what's wrong?
Sue? Where's Misha? What are you guys doing outside the den? Something. Sue couldn't speak. Her father instructed his female to take her in.
Get inside the den now.
He smelled the area, smelled his daughter's blood. His ears pinned back. He lowered himself. Kaylin hugged her daughter, who was inconsolable. Okay, honey, what happened? Where is Misha? I don't know. Something took her. What do you mean something took her? We were standing and I... What did take her sister? In one moment, Misha was standing in front of her, and then in the next, she was gone. Sue couldn't help but feel that it was her fault. Kaylin was so beside herself, worried sick about her older daughter. Suddenly they heard a loud roaring noise in the distance. Both Kaylin and Sue quickly whipped their heads up and looked towards the opening of their den. Something quickly came inside, furry, hairy, and imposing. Filled with rage and malintent, Sue screamed and tried to back herself up to the wall of their very small den. Kaylin also screamed and tried to shield her daughter, only for them to realize it was the father, Garth.
It's okay, it's me. Listen, we need to get out here right now.
Kaylin went up to her husband with pleading eyes.
Misha? I don't know where she is right now, but we need to go.
No.
Kaylin, listen to me. Misha probably got away, okay? She's hurt, but she probably got away. I don't see her anywhere.
Something took her, Garth.
And we do not want something to take our last baby, do we? We need to protect Sue. Let's go.
He looked out of the den and then slinked out, his long rat tail dragging behind him. Kaylin used her tail to grab the front leg of Sue, her remaining daughter. She looked back, trying to dry her tears.
Sue, let's go.
She ran out, and Sue ran after her mom, on her 3 legs, one of her legs being drugged ahead by her mom. Viry watched them through the trees. Sue looked up at him, seeing his eyes reflecting back at her. He said nothing, and she said nothing. She was in a daze, still wondering what happened to Misha.
Up this tree, quickly!
Garth ushered his wife and kid up the tree. Climb, Sue, climb! Sue snapped out of it and climbed up and followed her mother. Something crashed through the trees behind them. Garth quickly leapt after his family, but only a moment's hesitation did it take for him to turn around and try and look and see where the danger was coming from. He would fight this thing tooth and nail to protect his mate and his child. He was hoping it was Misha, but whatever was coming through those trees and through the brush sounded much larger, much more sinister. Garth narrowed his eyes. Even his night vision wasn't good enough for him to see what was coming. He hopped and then quickly climbed after Kaylin and Sue. They reached the mid part of the tree, where the leaf coverage was the thickest, and then they waited. They all looked down as they saw a big tree swaying, the sound of birds and other animals cawing. The moon illuminated the tops of the tree canopy, but that in turn made the forest floor even harder to see. All around them, they heard the screaming and the terror-stricken voices of their neighbors and the other creatures of the forest as they died horrific deaths. They could hear them being ripped apart. Kaylin cried and held her head into Garth's fur. Sue looked towards the moon, trying so hard to dampen out all the noise and the horror, until finally it stopped. There was no noise, save a few of the leaves falling to the ground and the sound of some birds flapping in the distance. Is it over?
I don't know.
Should we call out for Misha, just to see?
Don't say anything. Just be quiet.
Kaylin could feel eyes on her, and she looked in the tree next to them. She almost fell out the tree she was in as she saw what was there. Sue followed her mother's gaze to the tree beside them. One of the other tallest trees in the area was about 15 feet away, but they could all see clearly who was in it. In the tree next to Sue's family were a series of pairs of eyes that belonged to another possum family. It was the possum's family who owned the adjacent territory, the one that shared a border with that of Garth, Sue, and Kaylin. Oh my gosh. Garth! It's George and his family! Afraid to speak out very loudly, looking down at the trees below, Garth listened, and then he looked towards the tree next to his family.
You guys all right?
Charlie, George's female, nodded her head, almost imperceptibly. We're fine.
What's going on?
Callum, George's son, asked, his girlfriend, Oppen, clinging to him. We don't know. I don't know, some new invasive species, or I'm not sure.
Well, it's hard to pick up any smells, but I think it's safe to say we should all stay in the trees tonight. I'm glad you and your family are okay. George?
Garth calls out, wanting to speak to the head of the household. He's dead. Rec, George's daughter, says. Kaylin gasps and then looks at her male. Garth is in shock.
When? How? Was it tonight?
Rec rolled her eyes and started crying again, partially from the stress of tonight, and also from the loss of her father, which apparently was very recent.
No, it wasn't tonight,
said Callum, as his mother cut in. It's been about 5 weeks now. That's why he didn't mind the berry stealing so much. Charlie gave a playful and rueful smile towards Garth. She looked dead inside.
Oh my god.
Oh, Charlie, I'm so sorry. If we had known.
If you had known what? You'd have stopped stealing from us.
No, of course not. I mean, yes, Spare your platitudes. Doesn't matter now anyway. Your family's together. That's all that matters. When Sue couldn't take it anymore, she narrowed her eyes towards the other tree where the possums were. Their pompous, self-righteous attitudes had just gotten under her fur. She went out on the branch closest to the tree that was many feet away, and she bellowed out, "For your information, I just lost my sister tonight right in front of me. Her blood is still on my face. So you can continue acting as though you're the only ones who've lost anything. We didn't know that your father was dead. But I just lost my sister tonight. And if we're gonna survive whatever this is, we need to work together." Charlie cocked her head at the young possum. Her eyes shifted narrowly into space and then redirected away from Sue. "Well then, if that's the case, I'm sorry for your loss. Forgive me if I'm not weeping with sadness. What did we ever do to you? Sue, that's enough." "No, seriously!" "Sue, I said that's enough! You're the only one who lost Misha today!" Sue huffed and walked back towards the tree trunk, out from which the branch was growing. She put her back up against it and looked up to the sky, trying to hold back her tears. Garth was crying too, but he didn't want his wife or child to see.
"Maybe whatever it is, we'll leave. Most we can do right now is sleep. I don't want to make any noise or even try to make a nest for us. Just try and be as comfortable as you can. And,
We don't need you to give us orders, old man. We can take care of ourselves."
I really wasn't speaking to you, so... Alright, I wasn't speaking to you, I was speaking to my family."
"Everyone, please, just stop speaking. All together. Just all of us. Just stop. We're each mourning. I get it. You concentrate on your family. We'll take care of ours. Okay, Garth?"
I'm totally okay with that.
Charlie inhaled an annoyed breath and turned her back to them and wrapped her rat tail around her body and that of her son, Callum. Viree was hopping from tree to tree, and then he landed in front of Sue.
"Sue, you gotta be ready. You gotta wake up. Make your reality."
"Oh, Viree, go away. I don't feel like listening to your parables right now, okay? This is, so not the time."
You have to be ready. Use your ears. Sue!
Sue quickly woke up. Looking around her, she expects to see Viree, but he's nowhere. It was a dream. Her mother and father are fast asleep. Sue looks over at the other tree. The Possum family, George's family, they're gone. That was strange. She didn't even hear them leave. That tree was one of the tallest in the area. Why would they have left it? Oh well, it would spear her from the awkward glances that they were giving each other. Sue turned on her tummy and hung her 4 legs, straddling the branch, and tried to go back to sleep. But something just would not let her. She reopened her eyes, her lids heavy with fatigue and stress, and that's when she realized that her ear was twitching. Why was it twitching? She didn't even process that her ears were picking up something. She perked them up and lifted up her head. She placed all 4 of her legs on the branch and stood up very slowly. The night was quiet, but it was filled with tension. The trees were swaying and their leaves were garrulously clapping against each other. It took a while to realize that Sue wasn't just hearing the leaves. She was hearing something else. Something reverberating through the tree trunk. She looked down to the canopy. She didn't want to speak. She couldn't see anything. But then, her night vision kicked in as her eyes adjusted, and she could see the very tiniest of movement, like a large squirrel around the base of the tree. "Kyrie?" she said out loud, but not too loud. Loud enough that whoever was down there could hear, and stopped. What was he doing? Wanting to get a better look, Sue climbed down the tree onto another branch just below her, using her tail for grip so she wouldn't fall. Suddenly, 2 glowing eyes looked back up at her, brighter than what she'd seen in Kyrie's eyes. The tail was very fluffy. The body was very small. Teeth were gleaming in the light. It had to have been Kyrie. Sue felt relief. She went down. Kyrie said, looking up at her. Was he high or something? "Kyrie, what are you doing?" As she went down closer to him, Sue almost fell out the tree because the face that was looking back at her the closer she got to it was not Kyrie's face. It was that of a wolf's. The wolf creature returned her steely gaze. Sue is frozen in fear. The creature growled. 6 more like it came from out of the trees. She didn't even realize that they had been moving through the trees, very close to where she was. The scratching, weird noises that she heard were the wolves biting into the base of the tree, trying to fell it so that the possums could drop out. Would they do that? Could wolves really do that? What were wolves doing here? Sue knew exactly what these animals were, because her parents had told her about them. Gigantic, monstrous, shaggy-coated dogs that moved like wraiths through the night, more silent than any rodent, more stealthy than any owl. Their legs were powerful, like hooves, but as quiet and fluid as a stream running over some new grass. Sue's breath catches in her throat as she uses her tail to pull her backwards and start her ascent back up the tree. One of the wolves quickly backed up, its shaggy tail swinging from left to right, and then using its hind legs to push off, it quickly leapt forward, galloping with all its might with its teeth bared, and leapt up and took a bite out of the air, narrowly missing Sue's tail. Sue's scream wakes up her parents, who look down at her. "Sue!" Garth screams out, watching his daughter climbing for her life right into her mother's arms. Kaylin hugs Sue and cries, knowing that she almost lost her other daughter. They all look down at the wolf pack below. "What are they doing here? I thought they didn't exist anymore."
They don't.
Is that what's been doing all of this?
I don't know. Maybe they're a result of it. I'm not sure. Don't worry, they can't climb. I know that much.
I think they're eating into the tree, Dad. I think they're trying to cut the tree down. It's impossible.
They can't. They can try, but they won't. The tree's been standing for many years, I promise you. They will not. And even if they could, we can just jump to another tree.
Dad, I'm scared. Sue's eyes were filled with water.
There's nothing to be scared of, Sue.
Garth says. The possum family rests again, keeping a watchful eye on the wolves below. Sue falls asleep, finally, in her mother's arms, only to be awoken by something else. She quickly wakes up her mom when she looks down at the base of the tree and sees something she never expected to see. Something so dumbfoundingly mind-boggling that Sue had to wonder if she was dreaming. When Kaylin looks down at it, her breath catches as well. She wakes up Garth. Garth rubs his eyes and looks down at what his wife and daughter are staring at, and when he sees it, his blue eyes shift nervously. He wipes his face again, maybe trying to wake himself up from the hallucinations that haunted his nightmares. As Garth looked down at what his family was looking at, his mouth went slack. It was the wolves. He watched as the wolves circled the tree. He watched as one of the wolves divided into two. The biggest animal dropped to the ground, writhing, and then it was still. And then, when it rose again, it had multiplied into two. These two large animals started swallowing whole all the other wolves around them that just stood there as though they were lambs to the slaughter. The irony of it would have been hilarious if the situation wasn't so dire. And then before the family of possums' eyes, the wolves horrifyingly began to change. Their eyes started glowing. Their fur started hardening. The possums could hear the bones crack in these wolves as they changed into some horrific forms until they were completely different than how they looked before. Each time they changed, they also divided until about 15 of these creatures all stopped in unison, as though they had a hive mind, and looked up with their glowing eyes to the top of the tree, where the possums were. The possum family then watched in horror as some of the wolves stand on their hind legs and press their front ones up against the tree, and begin climbing it. Garth inhales a mighty gasp of disbelief. He and Kaylin start to panic, and at a loss as to what to do, they climb to the very top of the tree. Only 3 of the wolves were climbing the tree. Garth looks down at the wolves. Even if they tried to jump to the nearest tree, the wolves strategically placed themselves all around the tree, so if the possums tried to make a jump for it, they would quickly be grabbed and shook to death. Their safest place had now become their tomb. Garth looks at his daughter Sue. Daddy.
Sue, I love you. I don't want you to blame yourself for anything that's happened, okay?
Garth, what are you saying?
Come with me, Sue.
What? What are you doing?
Kaylin, help me.
Garth and Kaylin grab their daughter as the wolves quickly climb, closing the gap incredibly fast. Mom, Dad, stop. Sue tries to push her mother and father away. What are you doing?
You need to run.
Garth then pushes Sue off the tree and grabs her tail with his. His tail grips his daughter's very tightly. She instinctively wraps the tip of her tail around her father's. She swings in the air helplessly like a pendulum, all 4 of her legs kicking furiously. Honey, stop moving. Okay, just play dead. What are you guys doing?
Hold on to my tail.
Kaylin, shedding a tear, holds on to her husband's tail as well. The both of their butts entwined together by the tip of their tails. Kaylin helping to give a little torque to her husband's tail as he starts swinging his daughter back and forth, back and forth. The wolves close in. These horrible aberrations of nature with the glowing lava eyes use their long forelimbs to pull themselves up quickly. Sue cries the entire time, pleading with her parents to to not do this when she figures out what they're doing.
Harder, Kaylin.
Kaylin strains with everything she has, digging her claws into the branch as it swings, yet wider and wider. Sue can feel the power of her parents' tails, gripping onto her sweaty tail as it begins to slip, and as she gains enough height from her swing, her parents both grab onto the branch as they flip over backwards to position themselves underneath the branch as they catch it, so they can do a full loop before letting go their daughter by unraveling their tails at the right second to slingshot her far away, way over the canopy. Her weight and momentum carries her in the air. She screams before closing her mouth and letting her body go numb so she can cut through the air more effectively. As she happens to look back, she can see her mom and dad trying to fight off the wolves, trying to jump off the tree to save themselves, only to be caught and torn apart. Sue cries, helpless to do anything, helpless to save her family. And then she starts losing altitude. She feels the scratches and her bones cracking as she hits the branches in the canopy. Landing on the fattest branch she's ever seen, she comes to an abrupt stop before passing out. The next time Sue wakes up, she's in a serene area, a still lake with thriving animals, abundant vegetation, peace and quiet. She looks around. She tries to peel herself off the branch. She can feel the internal bleeding.
Don't move.
When she looks around to see who's speaking to her, it's another possum.
Are you alright?
Yes, where am I?
You're in our nesting grounds. But you're very injured, so take it slow, alright? No need to rush.
My family.
We found you alone.
Sue remembers what happened with her family. She cries tears of stress and aggravation, missing her sister and blaming herself for the events, having seen her mom and dad give up their lives, working together to protect their only remaining daughter.
You lost your family.
Sue looks up at the new opossum.
Me too. This is a safe haven for everybody who's lost their family or is looking to start over. The forest isn't what it used to be, so we've got to stick together. People like you and me.
Oh, what's your name?
My name is Domito.
Domino?
Domito.
Oh, my name is Sue. Thank you for helping me.
Of course. Here's some food.
Eat. Sue looks down at the food that Domito had brought for her. They're berries, very similar to the ones her father used to bring home for them, the ones they used to eat and share with together. Sue eats them, and with every one she pops in her mouth, a tear falls down her face. It would take a few weeks for Sue to get back on her feet and be at full health. It became a bit easier to forget about the ordeals. She was aware that she was orphaned. She was aware her family was nowhere inside anymore. They didn't exist, and it was all because of those monstrous creatures. But at least she felt safe here. In time, the forest became their own, and whatever the darkness was, it stayed away from their new home. Sue, now much older, has made a life with Domino and their 4 children, Quaro, Quidditch, Kaylin, and Memory. She had told them about the story of that night and warned them about the forest. No matter how beautiful it was, that there'd always be dangers, and that if something horrific like that could happen, the danger is still there. She would find herself climbing to the tallest tree in the area and overlooking it, waiting for those wolves to come back, waiting to see them again. But she didn't, not for a long while.
Hey, Mom?
Yes. Sue climbs down a few branches so she can speak with her son.
We want to go out to the clearing to play. Is it okay? I mean, I don't know why we have to ask for permission. We're old enough.
You always have to ask for permission. Remember, if anything happens to you...
Yeah. It could happen to all of us and lead back here, blah, blah, blah. I mean, but we have all those hiding spots set up for that reason.
Just don't bring any danger back here. I'm pregnant again. I don't need... I know you say that, but not long ago you led a trio of baby grizzly bears back here. I'm serious.
I know that. Would you stop? Every time you do the talking, this is what happens. Well, I can't speak now. I thought we had freedom.
Well, feel free to leave home until you have your own territory.
So I'm confused. Should we be asking permission or not?
Mom, we'll see you later. Kaylin swings from his tail on one of the trees.
What does she say? She says it's fine. Trust me, she doesn't care about what we do right now. As long as we don't bring danger back home, we're fine. Alright, so let's go.
Can I come with you guys? All 3 of the boys adamantly and simultaneously tell her no. Why not?
Because we don't want you to. Yeah, you're always bitching and moaning and complaining.
I promise I won't do that this time, please. I just want something to do.
Why don't you hang out with Mom and snitch some more on us? Oh, come on. No, seriously, you're really good at it.
Memory watches her 3 older brothers, left, carefully assessing their environment and walking on the forest floor towards the next trees and along the riverbank. Memory sighed sadly. She climbed to another tree, and she saw her mother looking out in the distance, some opposite direction. Memory climbed to her own tree, where she had built some trinkets, and what was essentially her own little cabin. She climbed to the top of it, and lay down, grooming herself. Something caught her eye, a little movement in the distance, and now, she sits up, completely aware. A feeling crawls over her that she's never felt before. She looks around, feeling as though danger is just around the corner. And then she sees something. It's in the trees, like her, hanging from a branch, like a monkey. She watches closely as she sees its eyes glowing on the horizon. She can see its long, sharp teeth and shaggy coat, a creature that resembles a dog, but it couldn't be, because dogs don't climb trees. With her heart starting to beat faster, before she can turn around, she bumps into something that sends her screaming and falling down to the floor of her cabin. It's an older squirrel. He's looking into the distance exactly where she was looking at, and he slowly shifts his gaze to stare in her eyes. What are you doing here? Who the hell are you?
They're still after you, you know. They don't forget so easily.
Okay.
You have to be ready. You and your family, that is.
You're creeping me out. Can you please leave? He quickly leaps on top of her cabin and then on one of the trees, onto which the cabin is fastened, with his bushy tail raggy and much older in quality than it had been. Many years ago, when he had met her mother, he looks back at her.
You're not her. Definitely not. She would listen.
What?
I'm sorry.
Barry flicks his tail, a little less agile than he used to be. He bounds away onto another tree, and then another, and then climbs up into the leaves until he's out of sight. When Memory gets back up, she shakes her fluffy white coat out, and then turns back to gaze at the creature that was hanging on the trees, about a mile or so away. It's gone. And the only thing that Memory can now make out is a slight movement in the canopy that seems to have a trajectory of movement that seems to showcase a pattern of which direction it's traveling. Memory nervously watches the trajectory of the movement of the trees and realizes that it's heading towards the area where her brothers said they were going to play.